everyone, it's Clarice and this is Clarice Reads. So the other day I uploaded a video about my 2016 reading resolutions, and one of the goals that I mentioned there was to reread more books this year. And that's because I haven't actually been rereading that much over the last couple of years, which is weird because when I was younger, I reread books all the time. I suppose it's partially because books that I read then were shorter, so if I, for whatever reason, had the urge to relive The Case of the Sunday Surprise with Mary-Kate and Ashley, it wouldn't take that much of my time. I could do it because it would only take about 30 minutes for me to read that book from front to back. Eventually got older, I started reading less books, and the books I did read were much longer. So when I did read a book, it was often a new book and not one that I'd already read before, because that would seem at the time like a waste of time. Especially later on when I discovered BookTube in 2014, I just didn't want to read any old books at all. I was just discovering all these awesome new books. So I guess I figured, why waste time in stories I already knew when there were all these new stories that I could be reading and experiencing. Last year I wanted to reread more books. I did end up rereading I think 4 books, which isn't a lot, but I'm still glad that I started. And this year I really want to make it a goal to reread even more than that, like significantly more than that. Partially because I feel that inside I actually am a rereader and I'm just going through this non-rereadery phase, and I kind of want to get back to that. Also partially because I feel that I'm gonna be able to get better value out of my books if I'm able to reread it. I didn't reread much last year, but what I did reread made me realize that when you reread a book, you're often going to discover new things about that book, and it's not like rereading a book is a waste of time because you're probably going to get something out of it, especially since you're not reading the book the same way you did the first time. Since I love making lists, I already actually have a big-ish list of books that I plan to reread next year, and then while I was making that list, I noticed that there are only actually 2 or 3 major reasons as to why I may want to reread a book. First reason I may want to reread a book is because I love the book, because I want to relive the story, be reintroduced to the characters, be re-immersed in the world. I would reread a book just because I know it's something I'm going to love, and I look forward to feeling the same things that I felt the first time, reading it for nostalgia's sake. The second reason why I may want to reread a book is because I'm curious to see what I think of it now. It may be a book that I loved previously that I'm curious to see if I'd still love, a book that I may have not liked so much previously that I'm curious to see if I'm going to like more now, because as time goes on, our reading tastes change, and books that I may have thought one thing of before, I may have a different opinion on now. And books that I may not have been ready for at the time, I might be ready for now. So I'm not going to base my opinion solely on my first reading. And the third reason I may reread a book is because I forgot the plot completely and I'm curious to see what it was about. A book that I reread last year, which also became one of my favorite books last year after I reread it, was A Thousand Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. It's a book that revolves around the oppression that was in Afghanistan and follows these 2 women. So it actually deals with some things that probably were too mature for me when I read it the first time. That being said, when I read it in first year high school and I was about 13 or 14, I still actually really loved it, but I think that there were parts of it that I may not have been able to take in as much back then because I probably didn't understand it as much and I wasn't mature enough. So when I reread it last year, my mind was blown and I just love this book so much. And it's because of that, a book that I really wanted to reread last year that I never got around to was Wicked by Gregory Maguire. This isn't Wicked. This is the sequel to Wicked. I gave away my book of Wicked because it was moldy and I had to. But that's a book that I read because of the musical, and I read it when I was 13-ish. It was really difficult for me to read at the time. I think I was too young for it, and I also expected something completely different, and so I ended up not enjoying it that much. But now that I'm older and I'm more mature and would probably understand more of it. And also now that I actually really love fantasy, I'm hoping to give it a second chance, and maybe I'm gonna end up loving it, or at least liking it more than I did the first time. My relationship with rereading hasn't been the most consistent for the duration of my reading life, but it's something that I hope to reconcile with this year by rereading some of my favorite books and rereading some of the books that I may have a changed opinion on, and I'm really looking forward to it. How often do you reread? Sometimes? Never? All the time? Do you have any plans to reread some books this year? And what are the sorts of things that make you want to reread a book? I'd love to hear all about it in the comment section down below. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!